Today we're going to talk about 5 drinks that can help remove fat from your liver. First of all, what is your liver? Your liver is an organ in your body. It's one of the largest organs in your body, and it actually plays an absolutely critical role to detoxify your body, but it does it through your blood. So your blood sends a huge amount of volume into your liver. Your liver actually filters it, and the cells in your liver actually basically clean your blood, remove those toxins, and send it on its way to actually go get more oxygen and nutrients to be pumped out. Now, the liver actually has some fat in it, and it actually can hold on to fat. So when you actually have more fat than your body can store, it winds up actually being sent over to the liver. So think about the liver as kind of a storage area for extra fat. And you can just build up there until your body needs that fuel, which comes in the form of fat, and burns it right down. All right. So we're going to come into this a little bit more, but your liver's basically main function is to cleanse and detoxify your body. So what's the connection between fat, body fat, and liver, like liver fat? So I'm going to actually walk you through what happens when you actually eat and how your liver plays a role when it comes to fat. When you actually eat food, all right, whatever it is, even healthy foods, you're eating your food, you're chewing it, it's going down into your system, you're digesting it. Your metabolism, your body's hardwired to take the energy from the food that you've eaten and store it in your muscles, use it in the blood, and anything extra can be stored into body fat. The body fat can store it anywhere. It can store it under your skin, subcutaneous fat. It can store it into the center of your body. Okay, the tube of your body can have fat. It's called visceral fat. A little bit of visceral fat is normal. It's a storage area. A lot of visceral fat is dangerous. It doesn't matter how big you are. You could be real thin and have a skinny tube of your body, but it can be packed with fat. And so then you're active, you're using up the energy, you're burning down the fuel, all right, until it's time to load up again on your fuel. So think of your body like a car. You kind of alternate between going fast, going down a road to do your business, versus looking at the fuel tank and it's low and you got to fill up again. Filling up is like eating. When you eat it, you store it into your fuel tank, all right, just like a car at a filling station. And in the case of your body, energy is actually stored in body fat until you burn it right down. All right. Now, what happens if you actually start to accumulate fat, more and more fat? Well, fat is accumulated in cells called adipocytes. All right. These are special fat cells that you're born with. In fact, it's one of the early cells that forms in your body. And it's critical because adipocytes or fat cells are fuel tanks for your body. Now, unlike a fuel tank in a car, which is made out of metal and very rigid, the adipocyte or fat cell is stretchy. So you can actually take a fat cell, load it up with fat, and it can stretch up to 3 times its size, 300% larger. And if you do that over and over and over again, you can kind of see how your body would start to swell. And that's actually how fat grows. Now, when your body's actually burning fuel, you're exercising, you're in motion, what happens to the body is that the body will draw down that fuel that's stored. And in fact, it even does it when you're not in motion. When you're sleeping, your body will start to burn down that fuel as well at night. All right. So whenever you're not taking in calories, you're not eating, your body's actually going to switch gears and start to burn down that fat. All right. When you exercise, or in your emotion, you're going to burn it down even faster. So that's how body fat is built up. That's how it's actually burned down. And that's just part of the cycle of life. Now, when your body fat actually is filled up, so let's say you're eating and overeating, that's actually one of the most common causes of fat accumulating in your liver. You're eating too many calories. Those calories are going into your stomach. They're being absorbed in your bloodstream, and now you got to store them. You store them in the body fat. Remember I told you, single fat cell can swell 3 times its size, and then the next fat cell needs to get stored up, and it will swell 3 times its size. And then the third one swelled up 3 times its size over and over again as you're actually loading up on your calories. All right. With overeating, you're way overloading on the fat. The fat is building up oh man, you're kind of run out of fat. So what it does is it calls on your stem cells in your fat to make more fat cells. And when I went to medical school, I was always taught by my professors that you're born with all the fat you're ever going to have. That's not true. We now know with more modern research that in fact, fat can actually generate more of itself. All right. When it needs to through these stem cells. So energy into your body gets stored in fat. Fat can expand, and then fat will shrink when you're actually burning down the energy. But what happens if you keep on overeating way more than you're actually burning it down, right? So think of this like a sink, right? Sink in your bathroom or your sink in your kitchen. You've got the spigot on. That's energy coming in. That's like fuel coming in. You got a drain, removing the fluid. That's actually burning away that energy, all right? So a couple of things that can happen. If there is a blockage in the sink, there's no outflow, guess what? Then you can just eat regular amounts of food, put regular amounts of water into your sink, and it'll build up, and overflow. This is what happens when you actually have liver failure, and livers can fail when they're full of fat. When livers are full of fat, they're not functioning properly, and you're not able to burn down that fat because there's so much fat in it. And so now, the more fat you eat, it just keeps on swelling and building up. All right. Now, the other thing that you can actually do to overwhelm your sink is if you put on the spigot on full, all right, and the drain doesn't change, and you walk away, and now your water level goes up. It's the same thing in your body. Fat and fuel goes up. Eventually, it's going to spill over. And this is what actually happens with fat cells in your body when you're storing fuel. You're overeating some more, still overeating. All right. Now your fat cells swell. Eventually there's spillage, just like the sink that you put on wide open, the spigot, water flows out of the sink down into the floor. All right. Water's got to go someplace. Guess what? When you overeat and you overwhelm the capacity of fat to store that fuel, what happens? The fat, the energy spills out of the fat into your bloodstream. And now you've actually overflowed the tank. Now, in your human body, that overflow gets caught by the liver. Remember I told you the liver's job is to detoxify. So when you've got this spillage of fat, so think about like an oil tanker running aground and spilling all the oil in the ocean. Well, when that actually happens in your body, and you've got fat spilling out, your liver basically jumps into action to detoxify the body. So it absorbs all that fat, and it stores it all up, okay? It's just another sink. It's another storage area for all this extra fat. Your body doesn't want to lose energy that is captured, so it'll actually store it in the liver. The liver gets filled with fat. Remember what I told you, when you overload the liver with fat, it stops functioning properly. And remember what I said about the function of the liver. It is a detoxifier in your body. When you've got too much fat that's overflowed your tanks of your fat tissue, and that fat overflows into your liver accumulates it, and now it knocks out your liver function. Now the liver can't detoxify. That can cause all kinds of problems, right? Because now you're not detoxifying other things as well. And the liver also makes proteins. And so when your liver's not functioning well, it's also not going to make the right kinds of proteins. What kind of proteins? Well, like the proteins you need to clot your blood. So when you have liver failure, guess what? Your liver is unable to make those substances that actually help your blood clot. So you become highly vulnerable to bleeding, hemorrhage, which can actually be fatal. All right. So there are real consequences to overloading your liver and having fatty liver accumulate. This is why we're talking about this. All right. Here's the thing. Fatty liver, due to overconsumption, is the number one cause today for the need of liver transplantation. That's quite a change from when I was in medical school learning it was alcoholics had a liver transplant because their livers got shot. And people with hepatitis also had shot livers. Now, in today's world, with overabundance of food, overconsumption of food, of calories, now it's actually livers. And by the way, this non-alcoholic, because it's not due to alcohol, fatty liver disease is happening in younger and younger people. All right. Not good. Remember I told you the liver has to detoxify your body. All right. Now, when the liver is actually packed with fat guess what? It also leaks fat out of your liver. And now you actually have lipolysis. Now you've got fat in your bloodstream as well. So fatty liver overflows your tank, not good. So what are some of the symptoms that you have of fatty liver? Well, if you have it, you probably know. It's more tired, fatigue, malaise. You feel just kind of crummy overall. And your liver is located in the right upper quadrant. So you might actually have some discomfort because the liver is kind of swollen a little bit. Now, when the liver shuts down, you can have cirrhosis. That's called basically liver shutdown. Scarring in the liver shutdown. And some of the things that people experience are itchy skin. The liver is supposed to pass a large volume of blood in order to detoxify it. If it's not working properly, the fluid backs up. And guess where that fluid goes? It gets deposited into the hollow of your belly. It's called the peritoneal space. And the fluid that builds up is called ascites. In fact, you can actually shake the belly and you'll hear it sloshing around. And actually, sometimes what we have to do is to put a needle in there to drain that fluid. It's a real problem when you have liver failure. That fluid backing up, it's not only in the belly, it's also down to your legs. So how many people have you seen like swollen legs? Well, liver damage is one of the causes of edema. And you can actually put your finger into the swollen part of the leg, and it's like putting it into bread dough. It'll cause a pitting space. It'll leave a mark right there in that fatty stuff. Remember I told you, liver failure also is accompanied by problems with your circulation. Well, you can start to develop these, what I call them spider angiomas, because they look like tiny little blood vessel spiders that are forming on your skin. And of course, because you're not detoxifying your blood, the toxins back up. And guess what? Your skin can start to turn yellowish, and the sclera of your eyes, the white of your eyes, can also become yellowish. So medical doctors like me, if we are examining somebody in the emergency room or the clinic or the ICU, we're actually looking for skin and sclera in the eyes for signs of liver damage and cirrhosis and liver failure. Okay. Now, when you get to that end stage where pretty much everything gets shot, guess what? You're going to need help. And that help might rely on getting a liver transplant. It's hard to get a liver transplant because there's not enough livers to go around. But the reason we're having this whole conversation, and the reason that I think it's really critical for me to communicate this issue to you, is because the liver, before it fails, is quite resilient. The liver can actually regenerate. All right. And so if you actually unburden the liver by burning down more fat, all right, before you get to the end game, you actually can allow your liver to kind of grow itself back, and you can actually be okay again. Here's the thing about the liver. If you took the liver and you removed 2/3 of it, okay, cut away 2/3 of it, the 1/3 that's left actually will grow itself back over a period of months. So the liver is highly regenerative. It wants to actually do its thing. That's how important it is in your body. All right. It's a highly resilient organ. So if you got fatty liver and you burn down the fat, you're going to unpack your liver, unburden your liver, and allow it to actually regenerate. If you are on your way to a fatty liver, or you want to avoid a fatty liver, you definitely want to actually burn that fat away. All right. And that's really, really critical. So let's talk about the 5 beverages that you can actually drink to unburden your liver by burning away body fat, harmful excess body fat. Beverage number 1, green tea. Here it is again, the ubiquitous green tea when it comes to health. What's in tea? What's in green tea? It's got a polyphenol, a catechin called EGCG, epigallocatechin 3 gallate, EGCG. All right. And you know what EGCG does? It does a lot of things. Okay. But in this case, for burning down fat, it activates brown fat thermogenesis. So let me explain this to you. Green tea activates brown fat thermogenesis, and brown fat is kind of special kind of fat in your body. It's good fat. It's not wiggly jiggly. It's not under your arms. It's not under your chin. It's not in your muffin top. Brown fat is wafer thin, and it's plastered around your neck, a little bit behind your breastbone, between your shoulder blades, a little bit in your belly. And when brown fat is activated, and green tea will activate, the EGCG will activate the brown fat, what that does is it fires up kind of like a space heater, all right? And when it fires up like a space heater, it's going to create require energy to create heat. Thermogenesis is creating heat, all right? And in order to create that heat, that energy that brown fat uses is drawn from excess body fat, like visceral fat, all right? So this is actually a way to turn on good fat to burn down bad fat. And it's a way of actually lowering overall excess harmful body fat in your body. Green tea can actually do this. Another analogy that I often give for brown fat, what it does, thermogenesis. If you have a range in your kitchen, right, and a gas range, what do you do when you want to heat up a pot of water or cook some soup? Go to the range, you turn on the knob, the dial, and you go click, 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 whoosh, right? That's what happens. Now you can put the pot on, you can boil it. Now when you go click, 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 whoosh, you're actually drawing fuel, gas from your gas line, maybe a gas tank by the side of your house, or maybe town gas, into that burner, and then when you ignite it, whoosh. Now you got that flame. That's exactly like what brown fat actually does. And it's burning down the fuel from your excess white fat. Okay, that's bad fat. Good fat versus bad fat. Green tea can actually do that. Now, how do we know that it actually works? Well, this has been studied in the laboratory, and green tea and EGCG can actually have that effect on brown fat when you study it in the microscope in the lab. But more importantly, it works in the clinic. It works in real people. So studies in Iran have looked at women, 70 women, who are coming from a diabetes clinic, and they have metabolic syndrome. All right. Now, this is kind of on your way towards diabetes and otherwise badness due to excess body fat and problems with your metabolism. So, what are the signs you have metabolic syndrome? High blood pressure, high blood cholesterol, high lipids, high blood sugar, and a large waist circumference. Waist circumference is actually kind of a marker of how much body fat you actually have in a tube of your body, right? So everyone, whether you're a big person or a skinny person, your body and cross section is a tube, and there's fat that actually grows in the middle of there, right? So what happens when your visceral fat, that's the fat inside the viscera of your guts, what happens when that fat expands? It's going to stretch out your tube. Now, think about that if you had a belt, okay? Belt size at normal, you get excess body fat. Look at that. You got to undo a couple of belt holes in order to be able to buckle your belt, right? So that's why waist circumference is actually a surrogate, a marker of how much body fat, harmful body fat, excess body fat you might actually have. So this study in Iran, it looked at 70 women who were in a diabetic clinic with metabolic syndrome, gave the women 7 ounces of green tea. That's just under a fluid cup of green tea, not very much, in fact. And they gave it to them to drink 3 times a day for 8 weeks. All right. And there's another placebo group that just got lukewarm water. The tea drinkers basically drank their tea, sort of breakfast, lunch, and in the afternoon. And at the end of 8 weeks, the tea drinkers lost 2 pounds, and they also shrank their waist circumference by almost an inch. And that means that visceral fat got burned down. Click, 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 whoosh. Green tea activates the brown fat. The brown fat burns down the fuel, burns away the fat. And guess what? Your waist circumference shrinks when you're losing excess body fat. This is the kind of thing that you can actually use to unpack your liver, unburden body fat in your liver. Now, in this study, the women who had green tea also had lower blood pressure. They had better fasting glucose. It's a sign of metabolic health. And they actually had better blood lipids as well, blood cholesterol. Now, these are all helpful signs that you're losing excess body fat and having a better metabolism. All right, this is going to be helpful if you want to, if you're battling with a fatty liver and you want to actually turn away from it. This is the kind of thing that you actually want to do, lose some excess body fat. Now, there was a similar study from Tehran University of Medical Sciences. They looked at 63 men and women. And these people, by the way, were between the ages of 35 and 65. So basically adults, okay, all the way up to, middle age. And they were overweight. And these people had type 2 diabetes. So they've had frank type 2 diabetes. And the study found that if you gave them, the people, 4 cups of green tea per day over 2 months, okay, what happened is they lost 3 pounds of weight, okay? But they also lost almost 2 inches of their waist circumference. So they shrank like by 2 holes in their belt. Usually those belt holes are about 1 inch apart, right? So remember, the waist circumference is stretched by excess body fat and it shrinks. You get a tighter belt, actually, if you shrink and lose your visceral fat. Now, these T studies were not done in people with fatty liver, but the principles are the same. Fatty liver, you got way too much fat in your body. You can burn it off by eating, by exercising, by motion. You can also eat a little bit less. But if you want a little extra help with beverages, green tea is one of those that can actually help you burn down harmful body fat. Okay. And by the way, it's not just green tea. Turns out, if you are a tea lover, most people like green tea. But if you want to try other teas that are also effective, here's some good news for you. It turns out that you can improve your metabolism and burn down harmful body fat with matcha tea. That's the kind of bright green tea that you would actually get at a sushi bar, for example. And by the way, matcha is an exceptional tea because while green tea is like the tea leaves steeped, right? So you take the whole leaves, you put them in a bag or you put a loose leaf and all the good stuff, the polyphenols, the EGCGs dissolving out of the tea leaf into the water. With matcha, you take the entire leaf and ground it into a powder and stir that in. So you get the entire leaf. You get all the EGCG, all the polyphenols, and you get all the dietary fiber as well. Good for gut health, good for metabolic health, helps you burn fat. And so matcha is another tea that's been shown to be fat lowering. Oolong tea is another tea. All right. And if you know what oolong tea is, you're like, you probably nod your head and say, hey, that's my favorite. Now, oolong tea is the kind of tea that you will often get in a Chinese restaurant. It is not green, bright greens, doesn't look grassy. It's got a little bit of an oxidized taste because it's slightly oxidized. It's not a black tea, not English breakfast tea, but it also still has EGCG, the catechin that actually helps you burn off extra body fat. Now, if you want to go dark, all right, English breakfast tea, Earl Grey, that's fine. But you really want to take it to the limit. There is a black tea called Pu'er tea. P-U''ERH, Pu'er tea. Pu'er is a small city in southwest China that originally developed this smoky fermented tea. It's a fermented tea, meaning it's got its own healthy bacteria growing in it. It's dried, all right, for a long period of time. And it was originally used in a trading route. So, these little bricks of fermented tea could travel long distances without spoiling. All right. Well, turns out researchers have found that Pu'er tea can actually shrink your waistline. It's got the EGCG, it's got the catechins, but it's also a probiotic tea that can also improve your metabolism. So although I talked about green tea, we also talked about matcha and oolong and Pu'er tea. And I'm telling you, black tea, like English breakfast tea and Earl Grey are also really good. Here's a pro tip though. If you're going to drink tea, drink it straight. Don't put sugar in it. All right. Sugar, carbs, calories. Now you're not doing yourself a favor. You're trying to burn down harmful body fat. All right. Let that tea by itself do its job. The other thing is that, some people actually like to put dairy in their tea. You want to cut your tea with a little bit of milk. Don't use dairy. And the reason is this, dairy from cows have dairy fat, and the dairy fat forms little soap bubbles that bind up the polyphenols. And then you drink it, the little soap bubbles that contain the polyphenols just trickle down your gut and you haven't really absorbed it. All right. So drink tea straight if you can. All right. If you want to cut it with something, cut it with nut milk. Almond milk is fine. Soy milk is fine. They don't actually form those types of bubbles. Beverage number 2, coffee, my favorite. All right. Now, coffee has been studied a lot for metabolism. It's definitely helpful for metabolism. It definitely burns body fat. And the way that coffee does this is that it activates brown fat thermogenesis, just like green tea. So coffee with chlorogenic acid, one of its bioactives, activates your brown fat. That's the useful fat around the side of your neck, behind your breastbone, a little bit behind your shoulder blades, a little bit in your belly, and it fires it up. Click, 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 whoosh. And then your brown fat is generating heat and it's powering itself with fuel and it's stealing from your visceral fat, your harmful fat. Activated brown fat burns down harmful, unwanted fat, unburdens your body of fat. That's really good if you're really trying to counter a fatty liver. Now, the other thing about coffee and chlorogenic acid is that it actually prompts your body to make even more brown fat. Put more gas burners on your stove. All right. Now it's not click, 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 whoosh with one. You want 6 burners. You want 8 burners. Coffee will actually give you lots of burners to be able to draw more fuel. And in fact, there have been clinical studies that show that this actually works. In fact, one involved 504 people, and they're all coming from Indonesia, and it showed that drinking coffee drinkers actually had less body fat. And by the way, although caffeine can stimulate your metabolism as well, in this study from Indonesia of coffee drinking, they were able to remove the caffeine, and they found even without caffeine, coffee, the chlorogenic acid, would fire up your brown fat and actually cause you to lose weight. Another study from the Harvard School of Public Health and researchers from Singapore and Switzerland actually looked at something else really interesting. They took 26 men and women, ages 35 or 36 to 69. These people were overweight and they had insulin resistance, right? So they're on their way to actually developing type 2 diabetes. And half the group was given 4 cups of coffee per day, 4 cups of coffee. I probably drink 4 cups of coffee a day. All right. And the types of coffee they made were with Robusta beans. And they drank 4 cups of coffee a day for 6 months. I can tell you, if you had a kitchen camera on me, I'd be drinking at least that, and over for many, many more months than 6 months. And the other group that they were actually researching got a placebo that looked and tasted like coffee, but there's no coffee in it. No caffeine, no coffee. And the coffee drinkers had their brew at breakfast, at mid-morning, middle of the morning, at lunch, and also after lunch, right? That's when they drank their 4 cups of coffee. And at the end of the day, what they found is that the coffee drinkers lost 4.6 pounds. They lost 4.6 pounds of body fat. They lost body fat. By contrast, the placebo drinkers actually gained body fat. They gained weight, all right, completely in the opposite direction. This really shows you that coffee has an effect on helping your body burn down extra body fat. Click, 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 whoosh. Beverage number 3, tomato juice. Now, listen, I love tomatoes. And when I was a kid, I remember drinking tomato juice all the time. You remember that whole vegetable juice V8? Had this like cut like tomato. And every now and then I'll actually, think about like Bloody Mary mix, right? Tomato juice. Now, tomatoes and their juice contain something called lycopene. Lycopene is a bioactive, a natural chemical, and it's a carotenoid. It helps to make tomatoes and other foods red in color. And tomatoes with lycopene have been shown to activate your, you guessed it, brown fat thermogenesis. All right, you can trigger on brown fat thermogenesis and burn down extra brown fat. In fact, there was a study from Portugal that gave just 1 ripe tomato to a bunch of young women in grad school before lunch to eat every day for like 30 days. And guess what they found? That nothing else changed. Just giving that 1 tomato would cause them to lose body fat, and they would lose their visceral fat. Their waist size would actually shrink a little bit, and all of their metabolic parameters would increase. So just like all the other foods I talked about, the beverages, green tea, coffee, tomato juice will actually do the same with the lycopene from tomatoes. Now, research from China have looked at 25 women who were normal weight, and what they did is they gave 1.2 cups, all right, 1.5 cups of tomato juice to drink every day for 8 weeks, all right? So think about this as a breakfast tomato juice. A cup is a little bit more than a cup, not very much. And at the end of the study, guess what? They found these women actually lost weight, shrank their waist circumference. And when these researchers looked at the blood of the tomato juice drinker, they actually found that there was also a decrease in the inflammatory marker. In this case, the inflammatory marker is called MCP1. M is in Michael, C is in Charlie, P is in Peter, -1. MCP1 went down. That's an inflammatory marker. And by the way, excess body fat is inflammatory. So this is another example where body fat went down. You measured it in weight. You measured in waist circumference. You measured it in the inflammatory marker associated with fat as well. And that was just a little bit more than a cup a day of tomato juice. All right. Now, if you're going to get commercial tomato juice, just please look at the label on the side and make sure that there isn't preservatives or flavoring or colorings that you don't want to have in there. All right. You're going to want to have pure tomato juice. You can learn how to make it yourself as well. And by the way, we're talking about beverages here, but you can probably guess if this works with tomato juice, tomato sauce is also probably going to be also a good way to integrate this into your diet. Got to be practical. You might not want to drink tomato juice every day. Then go for tomato sauce. All right. Okay. Beverage number 4, related to tomatoes, is watermelon juice. Now you're like, wait a minute, Dr. Lee, watermelon and tomatoes, nothing alike. You are right, except both tomatoes and watermelons have lycopene. That's right, watermelon, which has got red flesh. Remember I told you the lycopene helps to provide color. Watermelon has lycopene. It's got a lot of fluid in it, which is good, but it's also got lycopene in it. A lot of people don't know this, but watermelons were not originally, they came from Africa, but they were not originally red. I think they were yellow, and they weren't sweet. They were just used for water, for hydration in, the hot environment. But over time, they got bred to be red and sweet, and that redness actually brought with it lycopene. Now, researchers have been looking at watermelon juice, and here's what they found. They found that homemade watermelon juice, that means you get fresh watermelon, you chunk it up, you put it into a blender, okay, and you puree it. Can make about 3.5 cups of juice this way. These researchers did 3.5 cups of juice, all right? That's a pretty sizable amount of juice. That's more than a tall glass. But that drinking that watermelon juice for 3 weeks could double the amount of lycopene, that fat-fighting substance in your blood, because it's in your blood where it goes to work, all right? So watermelon juice actually is a good way to get more lycopene into your body. Have some tomato juice for breakfast, have some watermelon juice for lunch or in the afternoon. Or if you're going to go out, if you're at the beach or if you're going for a hike, drink some watermelon juice before you leave. And you know why? Because the watermelon juice has powerful antioxidant properties. And if you're going to go out into the sun, if you have a glass of watermelon juice a couple of hours before you go out, it will actually protect your DNA from the damage from the ultraviolet radiation that you go out on the beach, right? So here's a simple thing. Just have you want to hydrate anyway. Hydrate with fresh watermelon juice. This is a good thing to prepare if you're going to go out to the beach and you want to pack something. Again, if you're going to buy commercial store-bought watermelon juice, please look at the label. Most commercial watermelon juices have a lot of other things besides watermelon juice, all right? They got some watermelon juice, some real watermelon juice, but they've got sometimes artificial coloring, sometimes added sugar, sometimes preservatives, sometimes other juices. No, you want to go for the pure one. So make it yourself if you want to. Just pick up a watermelon next time you're at the grocery store and keep it on your counter. And then when you're actually ready to make the juice, it's sitting right there. All right. By the way, the other thing about watermelons and watermelon juice that's healthy, this is like an extra credit benefit for you, is that watermelon flesh has something called citrulline. That's citrulline, citrulline, which your body uses to make a substance called nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is absolutely critical for your health. And the more you actually have citrulline, the more nitric oxide your body's going to have. I'll tell you what nitric oxide does. It actually causes your blood vessels to dilate, relax. Guess what that happens then? Your blood pressure goes down. And the other thing that nitric oxide does is it actually helps to pave and maintain your blood vessels. So inside your blood vessels, your circulation, got 60,000 miles worth of blood vessels in your body. They all respond to nitric oxide. The nitric oxide will actually call up stem cells that will look around and look in your blood vessels, and anywhere there's a pothole or damage, it'll actually replace it. All right, so it regenerates your blood vessels. Nitric oxide is a regenerative substance. So watermelon juice containing citrulline can actually give you that benefit as well.
Hello there. Just a quick note. I have another free resource I want to share with you. 5 of my favorite Mediterranean foods to fight fat. Listen, I don't personally follow any special diet, but I do follow a food approach. I call it the Mediterranean way because it brings together the healthiest cuisines from two parts of the world that live really long and well, the Mediterranean and Asia. And I put together a list of 5 specific foods that you can add to your plate Mediterranean style so you can optimize your metabolism and fight harmful body fat. Download it for free right now from the description below. Now, back to the video.
Again, make it yourself. You're going to get store-bought. Just be really careful because most of the watermelon juice that I've ever seen in a grocery store is packed in plastic. Now you got microplastics to worry about, and it's got a lot more than watermelon juice in it. It's got added sugar, and you want to avoid that if you're trying to actually unburden your liver from fat. All right. Now, the 5th beverage is drinking water. All right. Drinking water is the most popular beverage in the world. Number 2 is tea. Number 3, I think, is coffee. All right. And clinical studies have taken a look at what happens when you drink water. It's more than you think. Like, water is good for hydration. All right. But it turns out that if you actually drink water, a couple of things happen. First, it stretches your stomach out when you're drinking water before a meal. And when your stomach's stretched out, it sends a signal to your brain, hey, we're kind of filled up here, so don't get too hungry. So you can actually blunt your appetite just by drinking water before a meal. That means less calories are going to go in. All right, so drinking water actually can provide that. The other thing that's really interesting is that drinking water triggers thermogenesis. Now, this has been studied. We believe that it's because there's temperature sensors that are in our stomach. So you drink water, glug, 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 goes down into your stomach. It's sitting in your stomach. Guess what? Water tends to be cool or cold. It activates the temperature sensors in your stomach, and all of a sudden your body goes, whoa, near my core, I got cold water. I got to fire up. I got to fire up to heat it up because I don't want to have a cold core. What does that firing up mean? Thermogenesis. All right. And so researchers in Germany have looked at this. They actually found that drinking just 2 cups of water caused an increase in metabolism by 30%. Increased metabolism by 30%, you're burning down fat. You're actually firing up your thermogenesis. Brown fat fights white fat. Good fat fights bad fat. You're burning down fat. And now you're actually in better shape. This is just drinking water, all right, just to warm yourself up. Plus the idea of stretching out your stomach so that you're going to be feeling more full, so you'll be less tempted to overeat. Remember, the number 1 cause of fatty liver in this country is actually overeating. So this is a good way water actually helps to circumvent that, counter that. So now this whole thing about drinking cold water and your body having to heat it up to actually body temperature in order to not freeze your core, scientists have actually calculated this. If you drank 6 cups of water every day for a year, 6 cups of water every day for a year, you would burn, on just to warm that water up, you'd burn 17,400 calories just for warming up that water. All right. And that's the energy equivalent of 5 pounds of body fat. That's what we're talking about here. Water fills you up as well, so you're less likely to eat. And then on top of that, it actually requires some energy, some fuel that you can burn away some of that excess body fat in order to be able to warm it up. Now, the other thing about water, if you're actually dealing with a fatty liver, you want to really watch out for is to stay hydrated. Remember I told you that the liver's main role, big role, is actually to detoxify your body. And if you have liver problems, liver failure, or you've got fatty liver, and you are dehydrated, all right, now you're dehydrated, all those toxins that are not getting purified in your body are getting concentrated. Now you're going to run out through the liver. That's going to be even more painful for your overall health. So staying hydrated dilutes out anything, your blood, okay, in terms of toxins, and is actually better and easier, as a wise thing to have when you actually have fatty liver. In fact, that's just something that you should be doing anyway, is hydrating. But if you've got fatty liver, you definitely want to actually drink water to be able to prevent dehydration. All right. Here's one more thing that I got to tell you as a pro tip. If you're getting water from a store, most likely you're buying plastic water bottles, right? You're going to go for a hike. What are you going to do? You're going to get a 6-pack of bottled water. You're on an airplane. What are they handing you? They're handing you a bottle of water in a plastic bottle. You go to a sporting event, you're running a marathon. What do the people on the sidelines hand you? They hand you a bottle of water, usually, right? Like we are so used to bottled water that we don't even give it a second thought. So is bottled water a great source to get your water? No. And I'm going to tell you why. Because now we know that bottled water almost always will have microplastics in that water. You know why? Because the plastic, including the plastic that's been reused, recycled plastic, it's shedding particles into the water, like billions of particles into the water. You can't see it, but it's there. You drink it. Now you're drinking plastic into your body. All right. We now know that, it's very hard to avoid plastic. We now know that if you look in blood, you can actually find plastic. If you look in heart tissue, if you look in blood vessels, if you look in blood clots, if you look in the narrowing of the atherosclerotic arteries, okay, and pick out the plaque and look inside it under the microscope, we'll find microplastics. They've even found microplastics in men's testicles, okay, embedded in your testicles. That's not a good thing, and it's invisible. So there's microplastics, even smaller particles are called nanoplastics. And we didn't used to worry about that. In fact, I would say even a year ago, I would have told you, we don't have enough evidence yet to know that microplastics are actually harmful. So it's probably okay, but cut down your plastic. Now, more recent data shows us microplastics are definitely harmful. In fact, a study from Italy looked at men who were in the hospital having to have surgery to remove blockages from their arteries, neck arteries, right? And when they looked under the microscope, guess what? In those blockages, they found pieces of plastic. You can look this up on the internet. You just look for atherosclerotic plaque microplastics and hit image, and you'll actually see the picture of the plastic studying the plastic. It's kind of like litter on a beach, except that this is inside your body and stuck to your blood vessels. And what the study from Italy actually showed is that people with plastic studying their vessel blockages had a 4-fold increase in having a heart attack or a stroke. So this is no kidding anymore. We're actually beginning to take a look at real harms, things that you don't want to actually have happen. So you're going to drink water, get it in a glass bottle or a glass container. Avoid plastic water bottles. It's also better not to use plastic water bottles you got to throw away, and it's going to wind up in the sea or wind up in a dump. We already have plastic everywhere. That's even in the air that we breathe. So, use less plastic. The other thing is that if you're storing plastic or taking water with you, let's say that you have well water at home and you're going to actually load up a bottle, think about it. Those water containers that you might actually have the thermos, make sure you get one that's got metal in the middle of it and not plastic, right? Think about those plastic sports water bottles that you might have for your bike, you might take for a jog, you might go out hiking with. Guess what? You're going to be putting those things in the dishwasher, and when the dishwasher wears down the plastic, then what do you think happens? The plastic crumbles and it goes into that water, and then you're drinking it and you can't see the plastic. This is a big problem. All right. So I'm going to say it again. Drinking water is good for helping you lose excess body fat among many beverages we talked about. But if you're going to have water, don't get it in a plastic bottle. Avoid plastic for your health, no matter what it takes in order to be able to do that. Now, some people will say, okay, let's figure I'll have glass bottles or I'll get it out of a tap. Dr. Lee, how much water should I drink? Should I really drink 10 tall glasses of water a day? Like, isn't that what the Boy Scouts said, or your mother told you, or your teacher told you? Look, this is actually what happens with these generalizations. Drink 10 tall glasses of water a day. There's no rule of thumb. Research has shown that not everybody needs to drink 10 tall glasses of water a day. You should drink liquid every day, and that liquid should be mostly water, all right? But it's not necessarily 10 glasses. It all depends on context. If you're a big person, you might need more water to be able to hydrate your tissues. If you're a smaller person, a thinner person, you might not need quite as much water. If you are just at home working, you might not be losing too much water. You're probably not going to need quite as much water, probably not 10 glasses. But if you're out working in the garden, or you're hiking someplace, or you're training for a marathon, or you're going to the gym working out or swimming, okay, you're probably going to need more water. In fact, it may be even more than 10 cups of water. So the best way to think about how much water you actually need to have is to be in touch with your body, to feel how much you need. It's something called interoception, right? And so just feel like, okay, do I need to drink water? Pay attention to it. If you feel like you're thirsty, if your body is telling you it needs water, drink some water, okay? Sip it, don't chug it, all right? Chugging is like after you've been lost in the desert. Sip it in order to be able to actually let your body equilibrate. Take your time with it, but satisfy your thirst. That's the best way to know how much water you should drink. Now, we've been talking about losing body fat and the beverages that can actually be helpful. But here's the thing. In the context of fatty liver, I need you to understand what I said at the very beginning. Your liver is a critical organ for detoxifying your blood. When you've got a fatty liver, you're pretty far down the road in terms of having a health impairment, right? The good news is you can actually do things like drink certain beverages, like we talked about, to be able to unpack the fat out of your body. Your liver will actually start to recover. And that's actually something you can do for yourself. But if you have fatty liver, you definitely need to be working with your doctor in order to be able to actually deal with it, because fatty liver is a serious problem. All right. It is not a homegrown remedy type of issue. The things we talked about, things you can drink, and I'm going to do another YouTube video talking about foods you can eat to unpack your fatty liver. But these are all sort of the things that you can do for yourself. The healthcare you can do at home, but you're going to need to be under the supervision and the guidance of a medical doctor who's probably going to refer you to specialists to help you have the best outcome if you have fatty liver. And this requires professional help. Hope you learned something from this, and thanks for watching. Dr. Lee, out.
Hi there. If you enjoyed watching this video, I know you'll love the next one. Stay here and check it out, and I'll see you there.